What if I told you that the most expensive mistake you'll ever make in your life won't be the stock you bought? It'll be the one you didn't. I passed on Federal Express. I watched Amazon climb from nothing and kept my hands in my pockets. I held on to a dying textile company called Berkshire Hathaway, not because the numbers made sense, but because I was too stubborn to admit I was wrong. My partner Charlie had a way of summing it up. He'd say I had a gift for turning $1 into 90 cents and calling it a strategy. And here's what's strange about making that many mistakes. You start to see a pattern. The ones that cost me the most, they weren't the times I bought the wrong thing. They were the times I stood right in front of the right thing and waited. Waited for certainty. Waited to feel sure. And certainty, I've learned, only arrives after the easy money is already gone. So today, I'm not going to give you a hot tip or a press release dressed up as insight. I'm going to sit with you. No rush, no noise, and walk you through 6 companies I believe are sitting in the path of something real. And more importantly, I'm going to give you the same 3-question framework I've used for over 60 years to decide whether anything deserves my attention at all. Stay with me, because one of these 6 might be the thing you'll look back on, one way or another. Before we get to the names, I need to give you something more valuable than a name. I need to give you a way of seeing. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not your broker. I'm an old man from Omaha who learned to read a balance sheet before he could drive a car. I've spent the better part of 70 years making bets on American businesses, sometimes spectacularly right, sometimes, as you've heard, spectacularly wrong. What I can hand you isn't certainty. Nobody honest can hand you that. What I can hand you is a lens. And once you have a good lens, you can look at any company, any industry, any moment in history, and start to see what's actually there. So here's the lens. 3 questions. That's it. The first question I always ask is this: can this company survive long enough to be right? A lot of brilliant ideas die broke, not because the idea was wrong, because the money ran out before the world caught up. Think about it like this. Imagine planting a perfect seed in perfect soil, right depth, right nutrients, everything textbook. But there's no rain, not a drop. That seed dies, and perfect doesn't matter anymore. So when I look at a company, especially a young one, I want to know how much water they have, how much cash is sitting in the bank, how many years can they keep running before they have to go back to investors with their hat in their hands. Because when that happens, when a company runs out of runway and has to sell new shares to stay alive, you get diluted. Your piece of the pie quietly gets smaller. Nobody calls it theft. It's just math. But it's math that works against you. The second question is one I love asking. Is there a river flowing in this company's direction? Not a trend, not a hashtag. A real, structural, unstoppable current of money that's going to move whether the company is clever or not. When I bought Coca-Cola, I didn't need a genius at the helm. I just needed to believe that people would keep wanting something cold and sweet on a hot day. That river has been flowing for over 100 years. It's still flowing right now. Some of the rivers I'm going to walk you through today are newer, and some of them aren't being dug by entrepreneurs in a garage. They're being dug by the federal government with billions of dollars worth of shovels. That's a different kind of inevitable, but it's still a river. Third question, and this is the one most people skip entirely. Is the price honest? Not cheap, honest. A wonderful business at an outrageous price is still a terrible deal. And a struggling business at a tiny price can be the opportunity of a lifetime. I've made both mistakes. I've overpaid for things I loved. I've bought things I didn't fully understand just because they were cheap. Both teach you the same lesson. Price always matters. All right, let's talk about the companies. And I promise, if you stay with me, you won't just walk away with 6 names. You'll walk away knowing how to think about each one yourself. The first company is called Beta Technologies. They build electric aircraft, full-size planes that take off and land vertically, like a helicopter, but cruise through the sky efficiently, like a plane. When I first heard that description, I'll be honest with you, my first thought was that it sounded like something from a comic book I used to read as a boy. But then I started running it through the 3 questions, and the picture got a lot more interesting. On survival, they've got roughly 3 years of cash on the books. For a company this young and this ambitious, that's actually decent. Revenue is growing around 30% a year, and they're spending heavily on research and development, which for an early-stage company is exactly what you want to see. You don't want them buying yachts. You want them building better engines. Now, the river question. This is where it gets genuinely interesting. The FAA, the federal agency that decides what does and doesn't fly in this country, launched a program to fast-track certification for electric aircraft. There were 8 available slots in that program. Beta Technologies won 7 of them. 7 out of 8. I've been around long enough to know that when the government points hard in one direction, money follows. That's not an opinion. That's 70 years of watching history. Beta is the riskiest name on this list. I want to be clear about that. But it's sitting right in the path of a river that the United States government is actively digging.
Now, stay with me here, because this next one is going to sound like science fiction, but I assure you the money is very real. Rigetti Computing builds quantum computer infrastructure, because I won't pretend I fully understand the physics, but I understand the context. The US government has launched a $2 billion initiative to build America's quantum computing infrastructure because Washington has decided this is a matter of national security. When that happens, when national security gets attached to a technology, the money that follows is not timid. It is not patient. It moves fast and it moves large. Rigetti sits at about a $4 billion valuation. This is the most speculative name on this list. I want you to hear that clearly. But when governments decide a technology is strategic, the companies positioned inside that current have historically done things that looked impossible to outside observers. The risk is real. The river, if it flows, is enormous. Let me shift gears now, from the frontier to the fortress. Oracle. You probably know the name. You might not know what they've been quietly building. They are spending $50 billion building data centers. They currently have a backlog of $500 billion. That's $500 billion in work that companies have already promised to pay them for. When I bought See's Candies back in 1972, that number would have seemed like science fiction. Honestly, it still does a little. Revenue is growing. Insiders, including the founder Larry Ellison, own about 40% of the company. That matters to me. When the people running a business have most of their own net worth tied up in it, they tend to make better decisions. Their margins are solid. They pay a small dividend. The risk with Oracle is execution. They're making enormous bets, and enormous bets made well create fortunes. But enormous bets made poorly can undo decades of good work. They also carry significant debt to fund all this building. The interest on that debt gets paid whether the AI boom continues or not. But of the 6 companies I'm covering today, Oracle is the one that sleeps best at night. It's not a lottery ticket. It's a large, profitable business sitting in the middle of one of the most powerful commercial trends of our lifetime. Here's a question I want you to think about for a second. What happens when 1,000 companies all rush to deploy artificial intelligence at the same time, and half of those AI systems start making mistakes on their own? That's not a hypothetical. That's Tuesday.
Dynatrace, ticker DT, is the company that watches over all of it. Here's an analogy. Imagine a warehouse that suddenly hired 100 new workers overnight. Some are brilliant, some make mistakes. A few knock things off shelves. Someone has to walk the floor, catch the problems before they become disasters, and fix them before the customers ever notice. That's Dynatrace. Except instead of a warehouse, it's the software running entire corporations. And instead of workers, it's AI systems making autonomous decisions every second of every day. An AI that goes wrong can delete databases. It can trigger costly decisions automatically. It can create legal liability before a human even realizes something happened. Dynatrace monitors all of that, and increasingly fixes it. The fundamentals here are clean. No debt, real cash generation, high margins, which tells me customers value what they're buying and don't shop around for a cheaper alternative. They've announced a $1 billion stock buyback, which means management believes their own stock is undervalued enough to spend company money on it. This is not a company that will triple in 6 months. It's more like a business that quietly compounds over years. If you need excitement, Dynatrace might bore you. And in my experience, the boring ones almost always outperform the exciting ones. The exciting ones just make for better dinner conversation.
Now, the fifth company. Most cybersecurity companies build walls, firewalls, intrusion detection systems. They try to keep the bad guys out. Tenable Holdings does something fundamentally different. They find every crack in the wall before the bad guys do. They call it exposure management. Their platform scans your entire digital footprint, your cloud systems, your code, your AI deployments, and shows you exactly where you're vulnerable, how serious it is, and what to fix first. Here's the business reality behind that. Every company in America right now is rushing to build AI-powered software, and every single one of those deployments creates new vulnerabilities, new entry points, new cracks in walls that weren't even there 6 months ago. And cybersecurity is the one budget line companies genuinely cannot cut. You can delay a product launch, you can postpone a marketing campaign, but you cannot look your customers in the eye and tell them their data was stolen because you were trying to save a few $1 million. The stock has been beaten down hard, roughly 50% from its highs. The company is profitable. It generates real cash. Revenue is growing about 10% a year. Not explosive, but consistent. Charlie used to remind me, sometimes the best opportunity isn't a company that's been destroyed. It's a good company that's simply been forgotten. Tenable fits that description. Solid business, undervalued, and sitting in front of a problem that is only getting bigger.
Now, the last one. This is the one I find most fascinating, and probably the least talked about. It's called 10x Genomics, and they work in a field called spatial biology. Give me 2 minutes on this, because what they're doing could genuinely change medicine. Right now, when a doctor suspects cancer, they take a small tissue sample and look at it under a microscope. They can see the cells. They can see whether the cells look normal or abnormal. But here's what they cannot tell you. They can't tell you what those cells are actually doing. Which ones are aggressive? Which ones are dormant? Which ones are quietly communicating with each other in ways that determine whether a treatment works or fails? It's like trying to understand a living city by looking at it from 30,000 feet. You can see the buildings. You have no idea what's happening inside them. 10x Genomics changes that. Their technology lets scientists look inside individual cells at the molecular level, not just which cells exist, but what they're doing, how they're talking to each other, and what that means for treatment. You can map an entire tumor. You can understand it at the level of individual cells. That has the potential to change how cancer is treated, how drugs are developed, how diseases we currently can't solve are approached. And 10x is the leader in this field. Now, the numbers, these have a turnaround flavor. The stock is down about 85% from its highs. Costs have been cut sharply, margins are improving. They recently beat earnings estimates by a wide margin. Revenue is growing again after a period of stagnation. And in the second half of this year, they're launching a new platform called the Xenium Prime, designed to take this technology out of research labs and into actual clinical settings. The commercial opportunity there is vastly larger. They've also partnered with an AI company to combine spatial biology data with machine learning, because finding patterns in the kind of complex cellular data they generate is exactly the problem AI was built to solve. The risk I want to name clearly: turnaround stories sometimes turn around twice. Management teams that cut costs and restore discipline sometimes slip back into old
Now,
habits.
I want to step back for a moment, because everything I just told you, the backlogs, the government contracts, the revenue growth, that's all useful. But by itself, it doesn't tell you what to do. And I've watched a lot of intelligent people get that backwards. They spend enormous energy finding the right company, and almost no energy figuring out how to behave when they own it. Here's the most valuable thing I've learned in 70 years of doing this, and it has nothing to do with accounting ratios or industry analysis. The investor's chief enemy is not the market. It is the investor. The moment panic sets in, the moment a stock drops 30% and your stomach feels like it's full of cold water, that's when decisions get made that can't be undone. Selling a wonderful business at the worst possible moment because fear felt louder than reason. That's how wealth gets destroyed. Not by bad companies, by good companies owned by people who couldn't sit still. Charlie had a phrase for the antidote. He called it sitting on your ass investing, which sounds lazy, but it isn't. It takes real discipline to hold something through the rough patches, knowing the business is intact, and do nothing. Most people can't do it. Wall Street actively encourages you not to, because Wall Street makes money every time you trade. It makes nothing when you sit still. That framework, survival, river, honest price, that's what keeps you sitting still when everything inside you wants to move. Because when you know why you own something, a 30% drop doesn't feel like a disaster. It feels like a discount.